Paul Mascetta here, and I am extremely excited to be sitting with Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist. Steve is the creator of the largest set of hypnosis recordings on the planet, and he is also pursuing a doctorate in education, which makes him extremely qualified to deliver information because he understands the way people process and learn information. And so we're really excited to pick his brain and kind of understand what it takes for people to do from a mindset perspective to attain wealth. Steve, welcome.
Paul, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Thank you.
So the first question that I always ask people are, and granted that you are a master of the mind and you're a decorated hypnotist, but Steve is also a self-made millionaire as well. And so can you tell us what is, in your opinion, is the first thing that someone needs to do to become wealthy?
Well, the first thing someone needs to do is work on their mental state. They've got to take it to a subconscious level. When we look at the mind, what we see is it's kind of like an iceberg. You know, what you see in an iceberg is a little bit at the top, but the majority of it is below the surface. Or when we think about a tooth, you know, people get a tooth pulled and they're surprised to see how big the tooth is because the majority of it, the roots, are below the surface. So we look at that and we realize that that's actually the bigger part. It's also the most important part. So the first thing someone needs to do to become wealthy is acknowledge how important it is to look below the surface at the driving force. What's really driving you? You know, when you get up in the day and you do certain things, if you look at someone who's wealthy versus someone who's not, they've both got the same amount of time in the day. They're both doing things in the day, but they're doing different things. They're doing things that are different from one another. And the reason for that is the subconscious mind, that below the surface part, that iceberg part, or the roots of them. That's what's driving them. So the most important thing is to acknowledge that. And once we acknowledge that that's what's driving us to do certain things in the day, certain things that are different than people who are wealthy, then we realize that we can take care of that part of us. It's not so much attempting to force it or attempting to do things that we think would be the right things to do. It's a matter of programming ourselves for success. And when we program ourselves for success, we take care of that underground part, that underwater part, that beneath the surface part, and it drives everything else. So in my expert opinion, the best thing to do is to acknowledge that and start working on that, because that's not just going to make a change for the day. It's not just going to determine what we do today. Oh, today I think I'll do things that wealthy people do, and tomorrow I may not. That's not going to be good enough. What's going to be good enough is changing the way we think in general about our possibilities, getting below the surface, reprogramming that.
Where do these thoughts come from? These thoughts that are buried in the subconscious mind that are kind of holding us back. Where do they come from? Do they come from childhood, parents, society? Where do they come from?
All of the above. They come from all of those sources. So you are, we all are, the end result of all of our experiences. And we think that, you know, maybe our upbringing isn't that important. We think, okay, we had an upbringing that was this way, and I choose to leave that or not think the way my parents thought or what have you. We don't realize how that affects us. We don't realize how we were brought up and how that affects us. You know, my father was raised during the Depression. He was born in 1925. He grew up when times were really tough. And he's passed away now, but during my upbringing, we had to reuse napkins at the dinner table. When guests came to visit, even if they were relatives, they were assigned a napkin. And guests would kind of joke with us. Afterwards, they'd leave and they'd mail my dad a bunch of napkins. They'd say, here you go, Ed, here's a bunch of napkins. He would do things like that. Ketchup, he would put water in the ketchup and shake it up to get every last drop out of it. Things like that. And we think that, you know, maybe that's our past. You know, those are maybe silly things our parents did because they were kind of traumatized by the way they were raised, and that's all in the past. We fail to realize sometimes how that affects us, how that can lead us to poverty-type thinking. We can be trapped in that rut without even realizing it. Maybe we don't add water to the ketchup. Maybe we don't make relatives reuse napkins or things like that because we might think that's silly or excessive. But maybe because of that upbringing, our dreams are limited. Maybe we think that that the universe is not abundant. Maybe we think that our possibilities, rather than being endless, have a roof on them. And we don't realize how that can actually stop us. So the trick is to acknowledge that all of those sources are affecting us, even sources from way back, even our friends. Our friends will talk to us. I read this article one time called The Next Village about how when you get ready to make that move, and you talk to your friends about it, your current friends about it, when you get ready to make that quantum leap to the next level, you talk to your current friends about it, and they say, what, are you crazy? You know, you're going to be at the next level, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that, you're going to be traveling the world, you're going to be wealthy. No, wait a minute now. We grew up with you. You know, you're from the neighborhood. You're from the same area we are. That's not going to happen. They won't say it to you directly like that. They won't directly come at you and give you a lecture about that, but it'll be implied in the things they say. There will be subtle things that they say in their conversation that will be designed to bring you back down, to keep you in the village, if you will. Now, it doesn't mean you have to leave your friends or leave your family or anything like that. It means you have to acknowledge the power that all of those factors that you mentioned have. Family, environment, everything. All of that is constantly having an influence on us. And you know that as the influence master, you know the power of influence. All of that's affecting us all the time, but it doesn't mean that we're up against an insurmountable tsunami that's just going to wipe us out. It doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that we have to program ourselves subconsciously to overcome that.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. Here's my big question for you, and this was something that I'm really excited to ask this question because this is a key part of the program. Steve, tell us how people, give us your 3-step system for people to reprogram themselves. So what would you do? What can people do on their own that you would normally do if you were sitting in a private session with them in your office in Savannah? What can they do on their own at home?
Okay, great question. And so we're looking at 3 actionable steps. What can they actually do? And Mike is the man of action. He's getting it done. He's the guy who will tell you what to do when you hit the ground running, where you're going to run, what you're going to do as you're running. But there are also subconscious steps. And so I'm glad you asked that question. 3 things you can do. First of all, step number 1, acknowledge that the subconscious mind, as we've already talked about, is driving you. That's the biggest part below the iceberg that's really in control. Step 2, you've got to do something about that. What are you going to do? Step 2 is to reprogram yourself. Step 3 is to keep at it. You've got to keep at it. And what that means is that maybe it's not going to work the first time. You know, Mike talks about being comfortable with failure. You've got to get comfortable with messing up and making mistakes and going for it and things not working out and changing course a little bit. Just because you suddenly know how to conquer the world and you're ready to go doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in everything you do, because a lot of your success depends on other people. You've got other people on the planet who are directly involved in your success. And just because you want to do this and you want to have that happen doesn't mean that they're going to do it. Sometimes you've got to change your approach. Sometimes, as I've learned over time, you've got to have more finesse, because I'm the guy who wants to make things happen. I think if I press a button, everyone's going to jump. That's not the way the world works. The world works by people doing things the way that they want to do them. So I had to learn that over time. So that's why step 3 is so important, because you've got to make changes along the way. So step 1 we already talked about. We talked about you've got to acknowledge the subconscious mind. Step 2 is really where I make my living. Step 2 is in reprogramming the subconscious mind. And that gets into huge territory. Luckily, as part of this program, you've got access to some recordings that are going to do that for you. Some hypnosis recordings that are going to do that for you. So I've taken all the guesswork out. But step 2 is reprogramming yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to take all the burden off of you and that we're going to just have Steve G. Jones handle everything. Because there are things that you can do in your waking life that are going to help also. And I'm talking about, rather than just listening to my hypnosis recordings, which you should do, but that's nighttime. You've got the whole day that you can do things. So what can you do? And step number 2, that's where you're reprogramming your subconscious mind. So it involves hypnosis recordings. I believe that's the best way to change. But it also involves changing your self-talk. You know, we don't realize how we talk sometimes. We don't realize that we use the word can't, that we use just negative terminology about our possibilities in general. We say things like that's
impossible.
Exactly.
Like
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's impossible. And we just throw that word out. We throw the word out. That's impossible. And I can't do that. Or we think to ourselves, what would my friends think if I did that? Or would I lose my friends? Would I ostracize myself from my group of friends? An interesting story that happened to me when I had my office in Beverly Hills, and I was raising my rates from $250 per session to, at the time, $2,500, and now it's even more than that. But I was going to raise my rates, and I talked to another hypnotherapist, and I said, I'm scared. I'm scared to raise my rates. I might lose all these people. And she said, and she told me this story. This other hypnotherapist said, there's a hairstylist who was afraid to raise his rates from $50 to $100 because he would lose, all his customers. And he went ahead and did it, and he hasn't missed any of those customers because his new customers are paying him twice the amount. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't care about those people. That's not to say that he was doing it to be rude. He just started valuing his time more. And so he was able to make that quantum leap. He was able to look at himself as someone who was worth twice as much. Because really, the more popular you become, the more things you do, the more things will be thrown at you, the more valuable your time does become. And so spending time with an individual takes you away from working with a large group of people or making a powerful program like this that's going to reach thousands of people. So if someone wants your time individually, that becomes worth more. You've got to start valuing yourself more. And so you will lose some of those clients. Well, we take that and we put it into our everyday lives, and we see people who are afraid. They're afraid to take the next step, whatever it is. They're afraid that they're going to lose their friends. They're afraid that the people they hang out with aren't going to be able to relate to them anymore if they buy a certain car, or if they live in a certain neighborhood, or if they start hanging around with other people, or start talking about money in a certain way. They're afraid that they're going to lose those people. Well, that's not what happens, because friends are friends. True friends stay with you for your lifetime.
Sure.
And what you do is you set the standard. You say, okay, I'm up here now. Come on up. You want to know how to do it? Here's how I did it. And Paul, I think you're a great example of that, because I've seen you develop over the years. You're the influence master. Paul, you used to be a guy who was in a job and you didn't like it. You didn't like it, and you saw people like me, and you saw other friends of yours, and you said, I want a piece of that. I'm that guy. And you were the guy who was helping us do sales campaigns, and in you, I could always see that for years. I could see that spark in you, and you had the influence. You have always been the influence master. It's just suddenly you kind of opened your heart up to the world, and you said, yeah, here it is. I'm not scared anymore. Here it is.
And so my belief is that certain people are more qualified or better qualified to teach information that they've learned or acquired to others. And while I can certainly teach people about influence and persuasion and stuff like that, I think that you're better qualified to teach people about how to actually take certain pieces of information and replicate a formula or make it happen over and over again. So my question to you is, how does someone create that new identity? When does that happen? Does it happen in a moment? Does it happen over a course of time? Is it something that you prepare for? How does that happen mentally?
Well, for me, it was kind of like your journey. Suddenly I'm Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist. Suddenly you're Paul Mascetta, influence master. But if you think about it, you've always been the influence master. It's kind of like you've been wearing a disguise of not influence master. Not as if you're putting on a costume of influence master. You've been hiding it from the world. So and not because you didn't want to help people, just because maybe you were thinking, well, maybe they won't accept it. Maybe it won't go as well as I think it should go. Maybe I'm not ready yet. And then finally you said, oh, the heck with it. Wow, here it is. So it's kind of like that. The trick is to believe that it's going to work. When I became Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist, it was long ago. I was hypnotizing people in high school. I got a book on it. I was hypnotizing them in high school. I followed up with academic study. I actually got a degree in psychology, then a degree in education, because I wanted to start helping people and educate them how to educate others. I wanted to teach them to teach others. But all that stuff followed my passion. It wasn't part of a plan or anything like that. It was just, I started working with myself to hypnotize myself. I was a shy kid. I started working with myself. Suddenly I wasn't shy anymore. I was able to get out there. And if you're shy, that's the number one thing that's going to hold you back from doing anything. You've got to let go of that first. I realized how powerful it is. I wanted to help other people do that. So for me, the trick was just, and I go like this because it's almost like taking off this layer of fear. That's really all it is. So if you, watching, want to develop into that person, realize it's not so much a matter of developing into that person. It's a matter of looking at the person that you already are. It's kind of like, you know, Oz never did, the musical group America says Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. He already had that. It wasn't, you know, it was a physical representation of something he already had that he was given, but he already had everything he needed. We already have everything we need. We really don't need hypnosis or programs or anything like that if we just tap into ourselves, but sometimes you need a reminder. And that's what these programs are about, reminding you of how great you already are. And so when we just open that up and let that shine out, whether it's through a program or just realizing how wonderful we are one day, we've got to take that first step out of there. And when we do, it's not always going to go that well. You know, when you step out and you say, hey, here I am, world, I'm the influence master, or I'm, you know, a clinical hypnotherapist, or I'm a mentor for people who want to be wealthier, or whatever it is you feel you've always been and you want to step out, the world's not just going to necessarily say, hey, welcome, all right, here we're going to give you $1 bazillion for your services, and we're going to ask you to speak everywhere. They're probably going to say, what? Who? You're who? What? No, never heard of that, sorry. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time. And along that path, during that time, you're going to have to stay resilient. You're going to have to keep your level of excitement up. You're going to have to be your own cheerleader. Maybe even the person you're with, the person you love most in the world, isn't going to believe in what you're doing. Maybe your parents aren't going to believe in what you're doing. Maybe your friends are going to say, hey, that's great, but they're not necessarily going to believe in what you're doing. You're going to come across that, and that's going to beat you down. You're like a little plant at that point. It's going to beat you down. So your belief in your wealth and your abundance, and I believe wealth and abundance, by the way, come from you sharing your gift with the world. That's where it comes from. Whatever you've got to bring it out. If you're a marketer, fine, you bring that out. If you're a hypnotherapist, fine. If you're the influence master, fine, you bring that out. Whatever you do, you bring that out, you share it with enough people, you become wealthy. There it is. There's the simple formula. Mm-hmm. But along that way, there's so many pitfalls that can happen. The number one pitfall is that there's no applause. You walk on stage and no one's sitting in the seats. There's no applause. It's just a quiet theater with you on stage. And so you have to be the audience and the person who's presenting at the same time. Eventually you get one person in the seat, then two, then 5, then 1 million, then 2 million, then 3 million. Then eventually everyone knows what you're up to. But you've got to believe in yourself along the way.
You know, I'm glad that you brought that up, Steve, because one of the key points that Mike mentions and he talks about is the common denominator that often separates successful people from unhappy failure type people is their ability to deal with failure. You know, the successful people kind of accept it as part of the process and just keep moving on, whereas other people just kind of give up and think that whatever it is that they're pursuing is just not meant to be because they keep failing at it. What would you say is a key aspect to programming your mind to be able to deal with that? Because that's not really, sometimes that's not easy for everyone. So how can you effectively pre-program your mind to deal with that and overcome that?
Well, the best way is to choose something that you're already passionate about. Because when I first started hypnotizing people, I didn't expect to, get paid $25,000 per session. I didn't expect to, make a ton of money. In fact, I didn't care about money. That's not what I was in it for. I was in it to help myself, first of all. That's why I sought out self-hypnosis. Once I learned that, once it started working for me, I wanted to help other people. And it was fun for me. I love hypnosis. I still do. I've been doing it for over 25 years, and it's still exciting for me. It's fun to do a hypnosis session with someone. And so first of all, what you're always going to fall back on is the fact that it's your passion. Let's take a baseball player, for example. One who didn't go into baseball just to make money, one who actually enjoys the game. So what if they don't get picked up by a major league team right away? They enjoy it. They still continue to play on a farm team. They enjoy the game. Because of their enjoyment, because of their passion, they may possibly one day get picked up by a major league team. But guess what? If they don't, it doesn't matter because that is their passion. They always fall back on that. They really enjoy it. But I'm telling you, if you do anything and it's your passion and you follow it, the money's going to follow. The money's going to come. The money's going to be there. You don't have to worry about that. But let's take the person who has the passion, which is, I think what your question was about, has the passion, they do get into that, and it's not working out, and it's not working out for a while, and maybe year after year they've been doing it, and maybe doing a job on the side, to their real job, their day job, and doing this at night or what have you, and it's just not working out for them. How does that person keep going? They've got the passion. They're not faking it. They're not doing something they don't believe in. They're doing something they believe in, but they're not generating the money that they want to. How do they do that? That's where subconscious programming comes in. And things that I used to do and things that I tell my clients to do are simple things. Just like take a Sharpie, a black Sharpie. You can write on your mirror where you look at yourself in the morning and look at yourself in the evening. You can write on there your 3 current goals in terms of affirmations. Now, some people don't like affirmations, but affirmations are very powerful. Affirmations are what got you where you are now, believe it or not, because you are affirming every day that, yeah, what my parents said about money is right. What my friends say about where I should be now is right. These are all affirmations. They're not stated directly. They're not written with a Sharpie on your mirror, but they're in there. And they're pounding away at you, and they're pounding in this direction. They're holding you down. So you've got to put your 3 affirmations on the mirror. And a little trick I learned is you can take one of those green scrubby pads and some water and scrub them right off. It's not going to be permanently on your mirror. So you don't have to worry about them being set in stone there. So you reach those and you write 3 more. Something as simple as that, or writing them on an index card and putting them on your refrigerator or wherever you'll see them every day. You've got to remind yourself of that. So that's one quick and easy step that you can do that's going to program you, because the world is going to keep subtly beating you down because your friends want you to stay where you are, and your parents don't acknowledge you as whoever you now say you are. They acknowledge you as, junior or whatever they think of you, and they think of you as the guy who should be like like they were, and whatever they were like. So affirmations, very powerful.
Makes sense.